Welcome to Arts for the Health of It, a podcast where you will discover creative ways to improve your health and well-being. Someone may have told you that art isn't for you, but they were wrong. Anyone can create arts for the health of it. No talent or experience necessary.
I'm just a little songbird, try to fly my way homeward with the melody, and I make the beat. Don't know where it'll take me, cause when I'm in the dark of night, I sing my way back to the light. Come along with me and your heart will see that a song changes everything. Oh, oh, oh.
Welcome to the Arts for the Health of It podcast. I am your host, Richard Wilmore.
I'm your co-host, Constanza Rader.
Yay! And we have a really great episode today that I'm excited to share with you. We just talked to Nick Fagan, who is an artist, a visual artist. He works a lot with found objects, which I think is super fascinating. I was like,
It's so cool
to walk into a thrift store. At the end of the episode, you have to stay for that because he kind of walks you through how you should go to a thrift store. Like him and Macklemore are just at the thrift store.
Popping tags.
Picking out all the things to make some amazing art. And if you're listening and not watching, make sure you're watching at least the beginning because he gives a quick tour of his studio and he has some amazing pieces.
So cool. But first, we have a special guest with us today. We have Carol with us.
Carol. Hi,
Hello.
Carol.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Carol, we've known you for a little while. You were an artist in residence with Hearts Need Art for a little while. You're a musician.
Yes.
And you are also a caretaker.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us about your hospital experience and your experience with Hearts Need Art?
Yeah, so I wanted to start by a note from my journal. I was going through my journal this morning on when I had written when my husband was in the hospital. And the first thing that I wrote down, I said, we were so blessed by these two musicians who just came by our room who volunteered with Hearts Need Art. They sang a couple of our favorite Christian songs, which made us cry. And they were so sweet and caring. We prayed together and talked a bit and found out that we have a mutual friend as well. Such a small world. So my husband was about to undergo a bone marrow transplant. And earlier in the year, he had been diagnosed with an incurable disease which attacks your organs called amyloidosis. Upon that discovery, they also found cancer, 2 small tumors on his left kidney. 22 rounds of chemo were complete. Now we had the bone marrow transplant and kidney surgery that were in our future. And so when we were there in the hospital, having Hearts Need Art come in right away really made a big difference to us. And it really helped us a lot, just signifying that we really had people that did care along with us. That makes sense.
Well, I know we all loved working with y'all, and then we were really excited when you asked to join our team and work with other patients and caregivers, and we're really grateful for that. And so we have our new Gratitude Grams program where we're expressing thanks to our professional caregivers, our healthcare providers. And anyone can go to our website, heartsneedart.org, and click on the Gratitude Grams tab. And you can write a note to express thanks to healthcare workers. And then we include these notes in videos that we send directly to them. They get them in their inbox. And Carol shared a note that we thought was so beautiful, and we wanted her to come on and read it just because, our healthcare workers are so important to us when we're going through health challenges, and it's important to thank them well. So Carol, do you want to read what you wrote?
Absolutely. Just before I read this, not only were every single doctor and every single nurse amazing, but I included the Hearts Need Art volunteers, not myself because I wasn't volunteering at the time, but just we all take for granted everything that everyone does. And so that's where this little prayer comes from. So I said, "Dear amazing healthcare worker, my prayer for you today. Lord, give them strength and wisdom when others need their touch, a soothing word to speak to them their hearts yearn for so much. Give them joy and laughter to lift a weary soul. Pour in them compassion to make the broken whole. Give them gentle, healing hands for those placed in their care. When they become weary, give them rest, which is so rare. Their work is sacrificial and cannot be undone. God bless our healthcare workers, each and every one."
Oh, that's so beautiful. And our heartfelt thanks and gratitude to all of our healthcare workers right now, going, on year 2 of COVID. We know burnout rates are high, and we just want all the healthcare workers listening to know that we love you and we're behind you, and we're very grateful for you.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Carol, so much for coming on. We appreciate you.
Yes, thank you so much. Love y'all.
Carol, can we get an update on your husband?
Yes, he is doing amazing, actually. He's back at work and he's got all of his immunization back again, and we couldn't be more grateful for Methodist
Yay.
Health.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're so...
We can't give hugs, so give him a hug for us.
Okay, air hugs.
Air hugs.
Carol, thanks for jumping on with us today.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Carol. Take care.
That was Carol. She's amazing.
She is amazing.
Let's jump into that interview with Nick Fagan. He's an artist who works in Richmond, Virginia. He deals with a wide range of issues such as mental health, spiritualism, and self-identity, and he explores these issues using different mediums as a way to amplify these issues. And it was a great interview.
It was a good interview. And one note, we mentioned an art piece that's in the Smithsonian Gallery that we couldn't remember the name of the artist, but the installation was very striking. So if you want to look it up, we mentioned the installation is called "The Throne of the Third Heaven of the Nation's Millennium General Assembly." And it's by an artist named James Hampton. It's a beautiful art piece. So if you want to check that out while we're talking about it, that's the name of it. So you can Google it.
Yes, because we had no idea what it was when we were talking about it. But then we looked up pictures and it's amazing.
It is. It's very cool.
Here's that interview with Nick Fagan.
Richard, good to meet you.
Thanks for jumping on today.
Yeah, totally.
How do you pronounce your last name?
It's Fagan, Fagan. So
just like it's spelled. I just wanted to make sure. Nick Fagan.
Fagan,
Depending on where you're from, probably the little accent. I'm from Wisconsin, so it'd probably be like Fagan. Like,
there you
not
go.
Sound great.
Yeah, Midwest is like that too.
Yes, exactly. If you are listening to this podcast, you need to jump over on our YouTube channel and watch at least the beginning part of this, because there is some amazing artwork hanging behind Nick in this video. Can you give us a little 360 tour again of your studio?
Yeah, totally. So this is kind of like where I make most of my work and stuff. It's kind of changing all the time, but here's a little 360 from my couch.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh. I love the mixed media. I love the 3D. Oh gosh, this is just so cool. And of course, I'm a huge fan of the crochet on your wall.
Oh, thank you.
As a crochet artist myself, I appreciate that.
Can we get an upshot of that?
Yeah, of course.
That's so cool.
So did you made that?
Yeah, so I use right now I've been doing a lot of fabric work. So a lot of times I'm using moving blankets and crocheted blankets, and what I'm doing is stretching them over canvases or stretchers. Then I'm going back in and actually cutting the images with like the crocheted blanket under the moving blanket, and then cutting the moving blanket to reveal the crocheted, and kind of giving this kind of weird kind of texture and different kind of mediums meeting.
The thing that I was drawn to when I was doing research on you was, I think that probably the first sentence in like your bio, that your art is a material reaction to my experiences with mental health and disability. And I think that 100% sums up kind of what arts and health is really.
Yeah. basically like I have pretty severe learning disabilities with like reading and writing. So like growing up, it was really hard to express myself
Mm.
in general, like trying to communicate feelings and things like that. But I realized like through visual mediums, I could really do a better job at that kind of really kind of be able to express something that I couldn't write or say because it was just too hard to translate. So
Mm.
when you don't have those options, you find something like that. So I was drawn to art for that reason. And, you know, I still am drawn to it. It is like a conductor for getting out kind of expressions for me.
Mm. What did you have a first time that you kind of discovered that art could be a language for you, an expressive language? Was there a class or something, you know, how did you come to that?
Yeah. So I've always done art and stuff, but like I never really thought about it seriously or anything. But I had this teacher in middle school who she kind of sat me by and she's like, you know, you really like can do this and like you're pretty good at like ideas or like, you know, thinking creatively. And I was like, whatever, okay, sure. But then she called my house at night, talked to my mom and my dad, and was like, this kid should really do art. And
Oh
he
man,
could
she pulled out the
really,
big guns.
Wow.
yeah. And I didn't know this was happening. And so they get off the phone and they're like, we just talked to your art teacher. And I was like, oh crap, I hope I didn't do something wrong. And they were like, she just told us you should do art and like you should. We're gonna support you in that. And so
Aw.
they were very supportive and you know, they were like, let's find something that like you're good at. Because before that I was struggling, you know. I wasn't good at anything really. So it was like really nice to find kind of home in that. My parents being super supportive in that.
Did you
Mm.
feel confident in your art making up until that point?
Not exactly. I mean, I think you're still a kid, so I was like 12 or anything. So like art in general was such a weird thing. It was like either like the cartoons that I like to draw or like the, you know, Da Vinci kind of like hyper realistic. That was my idea of art. So I just like I don't know. I didn't really understand what confidence in art was yet.
Sounds like you use a lot of found items, right? Like you're not necessarily always using traditional art materials for your pieces. And I would love for you to talk about that and how you kind of came to work in those mediums.
Yeah. Well, I've always been a thrift store person, kind of like exploring
Yes.
thrifting. Pretty much
That's really
my
what
whole
this episode should be about.
yeah, seriously. It like started with my grandma. She would always thrift, like always picking up stuff from different thrift stores, glasses, like a lot of lamps. She collected like lamps like crazy.
Oh.
But I think I got that in my like, you know, in my blood. So when I was in high school, I started thrifting and things like that. Mostly like t-shirts from like, you know, the 80s and 90s of like weird ironic brands. But then it kind of transformed where I started seeing things that at first I think they were ironic buys, but then it became more sincere. So like crocheted blankets, I thought they were just kind of like a gross, not gross, but the,
You can say it.
I mean, in a
I
thrift
will-
store, maybe, yes.
I mean, they were just tacky, you know. It's like
Yes.
they're like the worst color like combinations, and it's just like a weird pattern. Like was it like I forget. There's like a certain patterns.
The
to them.
chevron, like
Yeah.
the classic. Yeah. Mhm.
Exactly. And at first I was like, oh, this is so ugly. I like it. But then I like sincerely fell in love. And one thing that I really liked is about like thrifting and finding objects is the history. Like
Mm.
for me, I think there's like a big charge of an object that has been kind of like not created by me. However, I'm like curating it. So like figuring out this history, trying to figure out who made this or like what is this? Like why did someone want to do this and stuff? So I look for objects that kind of have that curiosity to me. So like again, the blankets were like I just think of these grandmother's figures who, you know, they're not like there's no sense of design, there's no sense of like art or anything. It's just I want to make something for somebody.
Mm.
So like I really like that charge of that. And like other things I've thought about, like I've worked with wood that was part of an old stadium that got wrecked down here, but it had all this history of like big performers would come and play here, and it was completely forgotten about. And I just thought about all these scratch marks that were left in the wood
Mm.
as this residue of people and stuff. And I wanted to show appreciation to this kind of like lost history of objects.
I love what you said about like the proverbial grandmother's crochet blankets, and maybe there isn't a lot of formal design or pretty colors or whatever, but there's almost like the sense of artification in its raw form of making something meaningful to them special. Like their grandchild is being born and that grandchild is very special to them. So they want to make something and they may not have the tools to or the know-how to create necessarily something traditionally beautiful, but like what a beautiful expression of love and meaning in kind of its rawest form.
Oh my God, yeah. That's like my favorite part of those blankets. They're like made for that. It's like, I love you.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I'm
stuff.
gonna tear up. That's so I hadn't really I kind of find myself hating on like ugly crochet blankets too. Like I guess the crochet snob.
But it's like it's in a
But
similar vein as like macaroni art from your kid, you know?
Yeah.
It's like this, or like bad pottery from your kid's class. It's not good, so to say, but it's beautiful to you because
Yeah.
it's like so sincere and like this like really nice kind of like, I don't know, like this kind of like love hours kind of thing. Someone took time to build
Yeah.
this for you personally.
Would you say that there's maybe two different classifications of art, or would you just consider them on a spectrum? You know, you have this like raw expression of creativity that's very rooted in love, but maybe doesn't have skill, and then you have like highly like a piece made by an artist that's excellent in their work, that's really awe-inspiring and beautiful, and like they're both art, but they're different. I don't know. I'm curious on your thoughts on that.
I think like let's call them like art worlds or something. That's what I like to think. That's like a really relative identity with the community you're in. So your exposure to art is kind of where you live or your community. If you go to art school, you're going to have a different kind of exposure, mostly to contemporary art, galleries, things like that. But say, or say you're, a graffiti artist and stuff, you're going to have a different exposure to that. And that's going to be your art world. Same with the person who's going to county fairs, seeing like maybe like a quilted piece or a soda can airplane or something like that. That's art to them. And it's completely like, those are all like, I think, exceptional, like good art worlds, like it's not like a hierarchy, so to say. I think some people think that, but in reality, it's just like more of like where you kind of see yourself or where you see art in your life.
How has your art worlds evolved since you started?
Oh man.
Take your time.
Where do I start?
I mean, going back to when I was like, 10 or 11 and stuff or like 12 or 13, I really didn't know anything. I knew like Picasso, like Salvador Dali, a couple of them. And then my parents were, again, very like supportive. And so they were like, you should start really going to like do art things and stuff and start like maybe like helping out. So there was a local gallery. It was a community gallery that I started just interning at and stuff, called Grace up in Reston, Virginia. And they started showing kind of weirder art. I wouldn't say like completely kind of like conceptual, but there was like a lot of craft elements that I really didn't know about. So that was really kind of like, okay, there's something there. And I did a couple other programs. One of the big ones that really changed me was I interned at the National Gallery for a hot second in high school.
Nice.
Yeah. And that opened up like the whole world of like modern art and really seeing kind of like 20th century art and really like seeing how people have pushed farther. So I saw something that I really was attracted to and I wanted to chase more because I saw artists that were like similar. Like I remember the first time seeing Philip Guston and really being blown away, being like, wow, I can really like kind of like relate to this artist in a sense. Like I know there's like a 40-year or 50-year gap between when he was making his, but I feel a connection and there's a place in a format where it's being shown. So this is where I want to be. So it kind of advanced, and then you go to school. I went to art schools, and the more and more you get into that, the more kind of like-minded people you meet, and you kind of grow the community until your kind of community kind of expands so much larger, and you're kind of then in your own art community, and contemporary art, I guess, is what we would call it and stuff.
It's been quite a journey then, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's wild to think about.
It has to go all the way back to the beginning. You've mentioned a couple of times the support that you received from an art instructor and then also your parents. Can you explain a little bit about how important that support was to you, what you think would have happened if you didn't have that support, and maybe what you might say to someone who wants to express themselves through the arts but isn't experiencing that same type of support?
Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't be doing art or doing art on such a smaller level if I didn't have that support, like my parents fully committing to me, letting me like be able to, doing art is a risky kind of thing because there is no guarantees of jobs. There is no guarantees of, this is going to pay off at all. It's kind of like you have your stuff and good luck. And, my parents trusted me and stuff. And were like, no, I think you can do it. And so having that support and being able to talk to them, especially when you're having a rough time of it, say like, there's been times where I just feel like I'm going to quit because it's just like, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm just like working too many jobs to just do this. It feels stupid. And I called them and I tell them and they're like, come on, like you got to get back up and do it. Like you got to keep on going. You can't quit on us, like, or you can't quit. And it helps me a lot. And same with teachers. I mean, that teacher in particular really started it, but I've always tried to find a mentor kind of figure to help me kind of work through things, to see how they did it or to just grow a little bit more in art, like learn how to do things. So teachers have always been important to me. And like right now I'm teaching a little bit and it's kind of cool to be on the other side of the table with that.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's really weird, like kind of being like, oh, now people are like asking for your opinion and like, what should I do? And it's like, oh man. But for people who kind of don't have support or have that, it is really hard. But I say the best thing you can do is build a community of like-minded friends of some sort of support of that nature where you can kind of go to them if your parents or like I don't know, whoever, like your teachers aren't the people who are like helping you. Building kind of an art community, building people that like are with you in this is going to be the best help for it.
Doing art and just doing art in general can be very vulnerable and self-revealing process, right? And so having that support, I know for me and my creative endeavors is so important. You got to have people to remind you that no, you can keep doing this.
Yeah. I mean, you go crazy. Like I've gone like crazy because it's just like, what am I doing? Like I'll find myself like sewing until like 7 p.m., like starting at like, 9 to 7 p.m. And I'm just in my studio freezing. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like I'm just like sewing a flower. Like why am I here? Like I could be enjoying life a little bit.
You're in the flow state and suddenly it's 12 hours later and you're still working on one flower.
Yeah, pretty much. And you're like, wow, what a day. Like,
what is it like? I love that like there's sort of like layers to it where you're finding something that someone at one point thought was beautiful and then you're taking it and turning it into something else completely different that's beautiful. Like that layering system to me kind of is so fascinating to like almost amp up something. What can you talk about like the process of that, like going in your hunt, your search? Do you, like you were talking about the history of things, like have you done a lot of research on things or are you like making up the story of the grandma knitting this for her grandchild or both?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's kind of a mixture. So in my opinion, it's less of a historical kind of like finding an object and learning the exact history and more of a spiritual history of it. Like this weird sense of charge you get from seeing something. You know exactly the character that's built around a crochet blanket already. And so I look for objects kind of like that have this charge, like this spiritual charge of like somebody or something has happened. And you can kind of build a character around that. So there's this history, but it's kind of ambiguous, so to say, but you can build it's easy to build like a character or mythos around that. Same with like the moving blankets. They're all moving blankets on top, which is like a whole different kind of like idea I have with kind of history and people and stuff like that.
When you say moving blankets, like you mean like blankets that you literally use to move?
Yeah.
Like to pad your furniture and stuff? Okay.
Yeah. So like I work as a mover part-time and stuff.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah. It's a good job. But I, kind of fell in love with these blankets because I realized, on hot summer days, your sweat and stuff get poured in and like it's this dented thing. And it really kind of like reminded me of this kind of weird labor that is unseen. Like there's so many, like I also work as an art handler time to time, and I do productions of shows. And one thing I've noticed is there's so much work that you don't see a lot of times that make into like the production of something. You see like the one person, maybe a curator or the artist, and it's like, wow, what a great piece you've done. But you don't see the like hundreds of people who made the process of that. And I thought about the moving blanket in the same way as something that was, I guess, like it was something that is used to protect, it's used for the process, but immediately when it's over, you take it away and you put it away, kind of the subjugation of like unseen protection or labor. And I thought there was kind of a charge to that, all this history of like holding things and protecting them and then being put away. It's like this like weird.
And then you combine it with a crochet blanket that
I like to call it like the
M&M,
like it's like you have like the hard outside of stuff, like this like labor and it's like gritty, and then you have this sincere kind of inside, the gooiness and stuff.
I want to know what you get, how it affects you making art. Like you talked about, the times when you're like, I can't do this anymore, and your family calls. Like, why do you keep making art?
I like it. Of course I do. I think that's a big thing. Secondly, I don't know like what I would do without it. I've gone so far at this point. It's kind of like, I got to see it through the end. It's strange. I think about like, when I like, why do I like art, or like, why do I do art a lot of times? It's almost like an addiction, like a gambling addict, so to say, in a weird way, when, you're losing money a lot of times. You're spending way too much time in there, and you're constantly being like, "This is the one. This is the hand that I'm gonna win. Like this is it." And some people like will be like, "Oh, you know what? I spent too much money on this. I'm gonna leave the table." But for me, and I feel like a lot of other people who do art, it's like, hold on, I got one more. I've got like I feel this good piece coming. And then like a lot of times you'll get a show or something, or like you win a pot and you're like, oh, I'm staying on, I'm good. So I know that's a weird metaphor, but I think that's like
it's a great metaphor.
Yeah, it works perfectly.
I mean, we talk to a lot of people that have, some sort of wounding around their creativity. They didn't have a supportive art teacher or supportive parents, and they were told that they couldn't draw or couldn't make art. And so then they they stopped, and they kind of cut themselves off from that form of expression and that way of expressing their voice.
Yeah, that is definitely something you see a lot, especially in public schools and things like that. Like just art as like secondhand and kind of just cut off, or not being seen as like a serious thing. I know in my like high school it wasn't and stuff. So I could definitely relate to people just kind of calling it quits if they don't have a support team with them. Or like teachers or a family that is going to help.
What's it like to showcase your work on a scale that you do? There's such a confidence in that, of being like, here's an entire gallery of my art. And I want to know like how that feels to put that out there to the universe, instead of, keeping it and just making art for yourself. And I always say I make a lot of artwork that ends up hanging on the walls of a garbage can, but that's where it needs to go. And it's very. But
you enjoyed making it.
But I enjoyed making it. So to be like, here, like that's such a huge piece of your soul out there. I want to know what that feels like.
It's scary. I got like, it's a weird feeling, especially your confidence is really kind of shaky when you do those things, because you are putting yourself out there. You're putting your ideas out there, and you hope people like it, and a lot of times I like to like maybe spend like 30 minutes in the gallery that I'm having a show or something, and then I want to leave because I just feel weird because it's like I'm watching people watching my work, and it's like I'm trying to like see if they're liking it or not because like I'm trying to read their faces. I don't know. Like it's very uncomfortable, but for me, I always think there's like audiences for the work when you make it. So there's an audience for myself. There's like kind of a critique audience, and then there's like a personal audience of someone being entertained by it. So when I produce work, I have those ideas of the audience in mind. Who is this for, and things like that. For like shows and things of that nature, a lot of times like these are explorations. A lot of times I move from medium to medium and kind of try different things out. And so it's like these runs of productions, so to say, and it's kind of nice because I get to explore an idea and then I push that out and then I kind of start over again. So it's kind of like being able to show maybe like a project or something of that nature. So for me, like showing with those, it's just kind of like this natural kind of ending to something. Like when I show, it kind of like a lot of times that whole kind of a series kind of fades into a different kind of, or transforms a little bit into something new.
What's something that you're exploring now that you're excited about?
Definitely these crochet pieces. I started like probably December of last year. So I'm definitely exploring kind of the dualities of different materials, with say the moving blanket being something that's banal and like work and rough versus the sincerity of the crocheted blanket and the kind of purpose built for it, as like something you show and you give with love versus a moving blanket that's like beat up and kicked around, and kind of using that as like a duality, and then using this imagery for like a diuretic setup for myself. So the imagery kind of comes from different kind of like drawings that I do, or ideas for like a mythos of like my own issues and things of that nature. And they're self-referential in myself, and trying to work through issues that I've been having.
Would you say that's also something that draws you to the art? And you mentioned this earlier, that there's a part of you that you can express maybe only through the art, and maybe share a little bit about that.
Yeah, that is like probably the main reason, or one of the main reasons, besides the gambling addiction thing that I do art. Yeah, because I need to kind of have an outlet that is like kind of makes me comfortable and allows me to do like allows me to express those feelings. Allows me to kind of really just kind of like, I have a hard time writing and reading and things of that, and even talking about some of the things that I feel like. And so to have kind of something that I can pour into and kind of really just let loose and just kind of like let all those barriers down and just have it there is really nice. And it's kind of it helps me kind of just deal with things, like it's kind of like lets out all the gas or the feelings you have.
So it's a fairly cathartic process for you, and would you say it helps to improve your mental health in that way?
Relatively. I mean, I think it allows you exploration of the issues that you're having. However, it doesn't give you any solutions in that. So I can explore why I'm feeling a certain way. However, and like, it will open up more questions, so to say, but it doesn't really resolve or give you answers. It's a different medium you're putting your feelings in, so to say. Maybe someone who sees it can help you then. But I think for the self, it's a little bit hard to get away from it.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. It's very revealing, but then sometimes you need to go and take those questions to someone that can help you with kind of the next steps. How do you find that resolution?
Yeah, I think that's like very important, because you can't abstract from yourself, you can like push it away a little bit or like try to get context, but if you really you need someone from the outside to look in to see like if these things are like being fixed, or is this healthy, and things of that nature. So art is a great way of like interpretation and maybe of like expressing these things that's happening to you. But I wouldn't say it's a solution to problems. So like, it's not like this is not like me being like, oh, this is therapy. It's me just doing what I'm doing as a cathartic like option and things of that nature. So I don't see it as therapeutic, so to say. because it's just something cathartic that I'm doing.
Yeah. It's almost like a compulsion. Like this is how I express
addiction,
this.
back to the gambling.
Well, you found your voice. No, I was just saying you found your voice and you've held on to it. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you like talking about the pieces you make, since they're so personal and they're so about your, mental health, and or is it like, this is it, take what you want from it, but please don't talk to me about it?
Well, so this goes back to kind of the audience thing. I kind of think about my work in different categories of different audiences that see it, and kind of, I break it down for myself, the kind of like comment, or like, the viewer, and then the critic or the critique. So I do it for myself because it is a cathartic action that helps me express myself. However, I also want to show this, and I want to show it to audience. So I do allow these diuretic issues to like show up, but I want them to be entertaining, so to say. Like, I know entertaining is not the right word, but I use it anyways. Basically, when someone sees it, they can go up and be like, that's cool, or they can appreciate it. They don't need to read deeply into it. They can just, have some entertainment, so to say. It's kind of like, oh, wow, crochet blankets, like, neat. Oh, it's like, kind of like that. Like, or like, oh, that's a cool sculpture. Like, that's cool how metal is. But then there is like the critique, which I will, and I'm happy to talk about with people, the deeper meanings of things, getting into these like emotional and kind of therapy issues and things of that nature. And I'm definitely fine, because I realize also you have to be open about this stuff. To shut down is not being helpful. And I think like, when you produce something like that, people are going to have questions, and you should, and if you're going into public with it, it's not something that you're leaving in your house. You should be able to answer them. You want to give them answers.
So if people want to see your work and check it out, where can they go to see that?
I have a website. It's nickfaganstudio.com. And I have an Instagram. It's at nick.fagan. And I'm also going to be in a show in May at a gallery called Super Duchess up in New York. So
awesome.
Yeah, a couple things.
We try to throw in a like practical thing that everybody can do after listening to the podcast. And I would love for you to kind of give a prompt to someone who's like walking into a thrift store for the first time. Like, I'm gonna go, like, I keep going to like remember those old glasses that had like the flowers on them, and like, that's when I think of thrift stores, that's what I think of, those super vintage glasses. But can you kind of give someone something to like look for, or how to navigate that when they're thinking taking something and turning it into art?
Yeah, I think this is what I do, and I think this is actually pretty fun to do, is put on your headphones, play one of your favorite songs on repeat for like 30 minutes, and then just walk around and just like look at things. Don't think practically. Don't think of like, oh, do I want this? Oh, is this cool or not? Just look. Look at form, look at color, smell, kind of open your senses to it. And this like kind of repetition, and this weird thing will happen, I think, where you start to really attract to certain things, and you don't know why, but you're attracted, like you were talking about the glasses and things. And like, when you're in that mode, you'll gravitate to things more. And so like, if you do that, I feel like you're going to find some weird things and weird things about you.
I love that exercise because it's combining music, which, is kind of my thing. And then also all your senses. And that lines up, what we know about trauma. And when we experience trauma, our brain doesn't encode it in the verbal area of our brain. It's kind of encoded in a pre-verbal and kind of that subconscious part of our brain that responds to stimuli from the environment. So it's kind of a way to kind of tap into maybe that subconscious part of you that needs not just expressing trauma, but just that subconscious part of you that sometimes needs a different way to reveal itself than just
the
verbal
spirit,
expression.
Like I like to call it the spirits, like the charge and the spirits of those things. That
the energy,
heart in the head, and you're like tingling from it.
Yeah, that's a great. I'm gonna totally try that. I love thrift stores, and I can't wait to.
Oh, it's a blast too. It's really
okay.
is.
So I found an item that I like the vibration of it. My subconscious is speaking to me. What do I do with it when I get home?
You buy it and you kind of then just sit with it. You know, I think one of the big things that I do is sit with objects for a long time.
Mm.
Like, just see what it's like translating and like let it be there. And then, you know, it's like a give and take. Sometimes I already know what I'm doing with something, but a lot of times I just have it with me. So I have like chairs and these plinths that I'm attracted to. And then I have a little bit of an idea, like maybe I'll use it for a drawing or maybe I'll use it for a sculpture. But I just wait until, say, something like kind of hits, or there is like kind of another object that interact that I think will like work well together. So it's kind of waiting and kind of like just building kind of an arsenal of these like charged objects that can interact with each other, and then you can kind of combine them and mash them and kind of build something with that.
Do you have a favorite piece that you have found, or a favorite piece that you have made out of something you have found?
There's a piece that really like growing up, and like it's from found objects. It's, I believe, in the National National Portrait Gallery, but it's this massive kind of like sculpture that is built out of tinfoil by a man from DC. Who kind of had this moment of like enlightenment about the new Bible and the new church and things. And his whole goal was to create this whole world for the new God and the new church. I forget the name of the piece and the artist, unfortunately, but it lived in this garage where he would pick up scraps and he would build over the years and years and years. And, you know, talk about like charge and like purpose and things like that. Like that guy really had it, and like seeing it, it's just unbelievable the amount of detail. I mean, books, scepters, whole kind of preaching areas. It's insane, and like seeing that and being like, wow. And then like, you know, seeing my piece, and I'm like, all right, that's a little bit like that, but it's like, wow, that's like intense. And
wait, are you talking about like he has these whole vignettes of, it's all made of tinfoil?
Yes.
Oh, I've seen it.
Yes.
I've seen this. It is absolutely mesmerizing. It is an existential experience to walk through those.
It's just crazy. This one guy had to do this, you know, like it's like, whoa, like what's going on? Like,
it's incredible.
Wow. And then we're going to let you go because I don't want to take up all of your day, but what's the longest it has taken you to make a piece?
2 to 3 months, maybe. For one, when I was doing these large scale tapestries, they were about like roughly around, like the biggest one was 12 by 12 feet, and they were all hand sewn.
Wow.
And so I would just be sitting on the ground for hours, like a day, just listening to podcasts or music and sewing with fishing line, just slowly doing it. It just took a lot of time, but yeah, I would say maybe like 2 to 3 months.
Well, now you have a new podcast to listen to, Arts for the Health of It.
Yeah, I definitely will.
Just saying, throwing that out there, you could listen to it.
Oh, for sure. I'm definitely going to listen.
Nick, thank you very much for jumping on and talking with us today.
Yeah,
thank you so much, Nick.
Yeah.
And if you're listening, make sure you go and check out his website. He has such cool images on there, and follow him on social. And if you're in New York, check out his show. But thank you for being here. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon.
Thanks, Nick.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to Arts for the Health of It, a podcast produced by Hearts Need Art, creative support for patients and caregivers, in partnership with the National Organization for Arts and Health. You can help others learn about the healing power of the arts by subscribing, sharing, and reviewing the podcast wherever you listen or watch. The podcast is hosted by Richard Wilmore, co-hosted by Constanza Rader, and produced by Ivan Briones. Our theme song, Songbird, is written and performed by Natalie Lane. Visit heartsneedart.org to learn how you can support our mission to create joy with people facing life-altering health challenges. Join us next week to learn more ways you can create arts for the health of it. The views expressed on this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of Hearts Need Art, their staff, board members, or other affiliates. All content is created for informational purposes only. This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice or to diagnose and treat any health condition. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health professional with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you heard on this podcast.